leader of our Democratic caucus for the coming regular legislative session. I again want to thank you for covering this press conference, and I hope will help jumpstart severely, sorely needed actions when it comes to helping our state to heal. Over the next several minutes, my colleagues and I will be highlighting several actions that we believe must be taken to mitigate the damage that hundreds of thousands of Floridians are suffering due to decades of inaction by our government. It is our belief that if we are going to ask Floridians to get back to work, the legislature must also get to work on their behalf. We will be discussing the current unemployment crisis, which is consuming the thoughts and fears of Floridians today. One which, while instigated by the spread of COVID-19, has been inflamed by policies put into place by former Governor Rick Scott and the legislature, and left unchanged by current administration and elected officials. Because of policies put in place with the intention of making life hard for the unemployed individuals and families across the state are suffering. Not only do we have one of the most inadequate levels of assistance in the country, but we also have an unacceptable backlog of people who have been waiting for their claims for months now. Ladies and gentlemen, day after day after day, dozens of Floridians call our legislative offices. They are crying, they are yelling, they are afraid, they are frustrated. The vast majority of them have never been unemployed and have never made an unemployment claim in their life. And at the one time that they find themselves in need and they turn to their government, we are failing them. Our message on this issue is and will continue to be clear. We need to act immediately to increase the level of assistance, provide resources to eliminate the backlog, and treat our people with the respect and compassion that they deserve. And as you hear from my colleagues here in a minute, we are going to be sharing with you stories, actual stories of claimants and their frustrations in dealing with this system. And for those members of the press that are here, when we're done, we have a list of claimants, their names and contact information, so that you can speak with them and hear from them firsthand the incredible level of ineptitude that they are facing in trying to get their claims paid. This COVID crisis, however, has highlighted a fear that my colleagues and I have been discussing for years. And that is that many Floridians do not have access to affordable health care should they be confronted with COVID-19 or any other illness for that matter. Before we began to see the devastating economic effects of this crisis, over 580,000 Floridians would have been able to access and would have been eligible for affordable health care had our legislature and governor done one simple thing: expand Medicaid. This number could have only grown as more Floridians have lost their income over the past days and months. The issue is also symptomatic of the policies established by decades of conservative leadership. The good news is that we can and should expand Medicaid in a special session that should happen immediately. And we call upon the Senate President, the Speaker, and the Governor to issue that call for a special session. The delays and inadequacies in unemployment assistance and the lack of access to affordable health care are failures that we must act to correct immediately. But there are also grave problems on the horizon that we must take action to prevent as well. Medical experts are forecasting that the threat of COVID-19 will persist and possibly resurge in the fall. This means that we will be faced with preventing the spread and protecting our vulnerable populations while simultaneously holding a primary election and a presidential and statewide elections in November. The right to vote is one which establishes the foundation of our democracy, and we have an obligation to ensure that all eligible voters have access to the right to vote, while also ensuring the good health of our communities. Ensuring safe access to this sacred right is a duty that we have as elected officials. The best way to fulfill this duty will be to provide for the delivery and return postage of vote-by-mail ballots to every eligible voter in our state. Let me be clear. We are not calling for an election that is only vote-by-mail. But we do believe that we should act now to automatically send every registered voter in the state of Florida a vote-by-mail ballot. Give voters the option to safely exercise the right to vote, so that if there is a surge in the fall, they are able to enact and exercise their right to vote without risking infection of themselves and without risking the health of poll workers. This is the only way we can address this problem, and it must be done by amending our statutes. Changes to the election laws that we need seen implemented in Florida cannot be done merely by executive action. Again, we call on the governor and the leaders of the chambers to call a special session and let the legislature get back to work, just as Floridians will be going back to work. While some in our state have chosen this as a time to be more optimistic, we recognize that those we represent are still in a state of crisis. The struggles that Floridians are facing today are the direct result of 2 decades of failed conservative policies. But it is not too late to make things right. I will now turn it over to my colleagues to go into detail about these various issues and our proposed solutions. I would like to leave the governor with 2 simple calls to action. Governor, do the right thing. Call your legislature back to work to help Floridians. And most importantly, pay the claims now. At this time, I would like to introduce my colleague, Senator Victor Torres.
Thank you, Leader Farmer. Good morning, everyone. I'm Senator Victor Torres of District 15, representing all of Osceola County and part of Orange County as well. As you can see, the unemployment issue is a big issue in my county, in my 2 counties in Central Florida. I would like to share with you a few stories I've heard from constituents who are desperate after months of being ignored by the state and filing their unemployment claims. We'll begin with Annette Cornett. Made a claim for benefits last month. On her online claim has been stuck in a pending status for several weeks due to an income verification requirement. And any attempts she has made to contact the department by phone or entering her information online has been unsuccessful. I have a Jorge Rivera, was also unemployed prior to the pandemic and receiving his weekly unemployment benefits. In late March, he was approved for an extension of his benefits, but several weeks following that extension, his payments stopped because he was unable to log into the system and claim his biweekly eligibility. And finally, I have Donald Campaña, filed his unemployment claim in mid-March, and he has remained in a pending status for 2 months now, after making hundreds of phone calls to the DEO phone number over several weeks. He has spoken with department employees that assured him his issues will be resolved, yet there is still no change in his status. You have his info, so you can give him a call. These are just a few of the examples of hundreds of calls my office has received from constituents. 2 weeks ago, I participated in a caravan in Central Florida with the labor union Unite Here. These are Disney workers. 400 cars participated in a caravan from Osceola County to Orange County. We collectively called on Governor DeSantis and the state to fix these problems with the Florida broken unemployment system. Mind you, these were employees of Disney. Remember when Disney sent the 43,000 they furloughed to DEO? That this would be like, hey, I got you covered. Hoodwink. I call it hoodwink. Didn't happen. Many of them are still unemployed and not getting their checks. There's one group that I want to mention here. Veterans. As a Marine, how many veterans out there who are looking for their unemployment benefits? How many families are struggling? Also, how many building trades, construction guys? They are out of work. They're not getting their benefits. IUPAT, building trades, iron workers, carpenters, electricians, all these skills, all these trades, they have hundreds of unemployed labor guys and girls without work, without getting anything in return or getting the runaround. We further call on the governor to guarantee workers to receive the full benefits by making it clear that all claims will be paid retroactive back to the date the worker was unemployed, not the date they were finally able to claim their Florida system. We also demand that the weekly maximum benefit of $275 be increased to at least $400 per week, and term of payments to exceed from 12 weeks to 26 weeks, just as the CARE Act. This is a message that I'm sending the governor. The governor could fix the issue of extending the amount of weeks people are eligible today with a stroke of a pen, but he refuses to do the right thing for the people of Florida. I stand here as a labor guy. I know how it is to live paycheck to paycheck. We nearly have 1 million people still haven't gotten their checks. We need to help them. These are desperate times for our citizens, and it rests on the shoulders of this governor. And hopefully, he'll hear our call, because he has the power with the stroke of the pen to make this happen. Thank you again. And now I'd like to bring my colleague up here, Senator Jason Pizzo.
Morning, everybody. I've been up here for a few weeks, like my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, sending emails and phone calls without being able to get a face-to-face with some people that control the destiny of Floridians was very frustrating. I will tell you, being up here for this amount of time, I don't find any disagreement within the ranks and the staff members of each of these agencies about how upset and mortified they are. What I've been saying for the past few days, and really I hope it resonates loud enough that it permeates the walls behind us. Nobody's blaming Rick Scott for COVID. Nobody's blaming Governor DeSantis for COVID. Nobody's blaming a party or a person in particular or a group. It was coming regardless of political persuasion, regardless of race, regardless of geography. Nobody's going to remember the invasion of COVID and who was governor at the time, but they are going to remember when they're about to lose their home, when they're about to lose their car, when they face their children and can't feed them and can't clothe them and can't house them. They'll remember that. And so that's the message that I wish would be taken away. To our colleagues on the Republican side who wouldn't sign for a special session, we've set up a special hotline. The phone number is 850-222-3411. That's 850-222-3411 for the remorseful Republicans on the special special session issue. We fielded thousands of people. The greatest frustration that you all must recognize and realize is you've heard anecdotally about individual stories. You'll see them on the news. You'll carry them yourselves. But it's us that talk to the moms who are desperate and want to take their lives and walk into oncoming traffic. It's us that hear from cancer patients in our community who can't buy medicine. It's us that hear kids crying in the background when desperate dads can't provide for their kids. So we gave everyone the burden of staying home. We all accepted it. I accepted it. But we didn't give them the benefit of a promise that was made both by their state and by the companies that they work for to be able to enjoy. I'm not talking about a lavish lifestyle characterized by others. I'm talking about human decency. I'm talking about the ability to, in the third largest state in the world's wealthiest nation, to be able to eat, just to be able to go to bed and not worry about being evicted and being thrown out. And we keep waiting to the midnight hour on all these decisions. We got to push and push and push just to get an announcement that the eviction moratorium would yet again be extended. We're getting mixed messages about people that don't understand the technology of the program. I spoke to Deloitte yesterday afternoon at length about their participation in the website that we have and the work that they did on it. And the takeaway from that conversation were the policy changes made after the site was built that further complicates the operation of that site. I don't like to say that it's nefarious. I don't want to say that it's so ill-intended, but it doesn't smell good. So we're beyond frustrated at this point. I think we're angry. I think we're doing a good job of keeping it in and remaining civilized. But here's the bottom line. Again, we pledged over a month ago to let us, to our staff members that are behind you guys, those are the people you should be putting the cameras on, our aides, Jenna and Maggie and Dustin. These are the people that work 20-hour days right now, feeling the pain of all of our constituents, along with us. And we pledged over a month ago to let us participate. We'll work call centers. We'll work the mailroom. These are our constituents. The staff members, the call center employees that are hired, and now we find out that live in Houston, that live in Louisiana, live in Alabama, they don't have constituents. We do. Let us work in the mailroom. Let us work in the call center. Let us process ID verifications and fraudulent background checks and employer wage verification. We can do it. We're state employees. We're already getting paid. You don't have to spend $100 million. We're right here. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pizzo. You know, I'm State Senator Perry Thurston, and I represent Senate District 33, which is in Broward County. And I'm pleased to stand here with my colleagues, Leader Farmer, Victor Torres, and Jason Pizzo. And I want you to know that you don't see the other 13, but we stand united in what we're trying to accomplish here. You know, institutional knowledge is very important. As I look at some of you all, you've been here longer than I've been here, but you know the history of this system. And the reason institutional knowledge is important is because when people come and tell you they're surprised that we're going through this, what we're going through. As Senator Pizzo said, we're not talking about this pandemic. Clearly, that's not something that could be anticipated and expected. But this faulty system that's causing good, hard-working Floridians to suffer, that's no surprise. That's no surprise because in 2011, when this system was implemented, all of my colleagues voted against it. We voted against it because we knew that it was wrong. We voted against it because it's wrong to pay people the basic minimum that you can pay them. These are not people who don't want to work. These are people who have been laid off. Now it's multiplied because of this pandemic. But it wasn't right then. It wasn't right that Florida's at the bottom of the number of weeks that we will compensate hard-working Floridians. As Senator Torres says, we're asking that that be changed. This is the time to change it. You know, when we go out and we do food distribution, and all of us do, all of our colleagues, we have food distributions in our district. Good, hard-working people who've never had to ask for anything in their lives because they were self-sufficient. There's no less than 1,000 every food distribution we have, and my staff is here as well, and they help put those on, and they're there feeding the families. No less than 1,000 cars show up 3 hours early, and they sit there and they wait for that food because that's food insecurity for someone who's never had to experience that before. That's a problem. That's a problem. This is not a surprise when we have a unanimous vote on one side and total opposition on the other side. This is just wrong. And I have a simple message as well. My simple message is pay the damn claims. Pay them. If you're worried about fraud, go back and look up that after it's over with, after you compensate these people. We're going to put them back to work, and we haven't even bothered to give them what they were promised, what they negotiated for, what their contracts called for them to have. They did their part. We need to do our part. It's no surprise when you know that it's coming. And we're just not that bright. We just cared about those individuals who were unemployed and what they would receive. Now, there's another crisis that's looming on the horizon. And it's not that hurricane out there down that's getting ready to hit South Florida. It's the intersection between COVID-19 and our elections that's coming up. Leader Farmer spoke about it. Well, it's critically important that we'll deal with that right now. We need to deal with that right now. You know why? Because just like we're saying this unemployment catastrophe is a surprise, we'll be saying that's a surprise too. Well, it's not a surprise when you know it's coming. And you know that we have vulnerable people in our community. We have elder people here in Leon County, but in South Florida we have quite a few. And we can't afford to have them make a decision between their health and their right to vote. So we do need to make sure each and every one of them get a ballot. We need to give them that option to say, well, no, I'm not going to be going out here talking about social distancing. I'm going to vote early. I'm going to send that ballot in. You see, our traditional election process is not designed for social distancing. It's just not. So we've got to take the action that's necessary to make sure we can protect our vulnerable individuals, and while we at the same time protect their rights to vote. So now, is that going to be costly? Clearly, there's going to be additional costs. So I'm happy to see that our leadership here in Tallahassee has finally decided to accept the CARES Act money that's been designated for that. The question is, what took so long? You know, do we not want to have an effective election come August and then again in November? So, but I'm glad that we're going to accept that because we need those funds. There will be additional costs, but it's important. It's important that we not come into this situation in December and we say, well, these are the lowest numbers we've ever had in any national election. And we say, well, what a surprise. Just like it's no surprise that this horrific unemployment system is failing the people of the state of Florida, we have an opportunity not to fail the people with regards to their right to vote, with regards to protecting their health. We are all calling, our colleagues who you don't see here, join us in this call. And we're calling for them to call a special session. Let's deal with these issues. These are the type of issues that people understand is the need for a special session. Let's call it. Let's deal with this unemployment disaster. Let's deal with the preparation of our next election. Let's deal with the fact that we need to protect the health of our citizens. The time to do it is not later and say, oh, I'm surprised. The time for our leadership to step forward is now. Thank you very much.
I thank my colleagues for shining a light on these issues, and that's why we are here. We are physically here to demonstrate to the governor and to our legislative leadership we are ready to get back to work. Just as Floridians are going back to work, it's time for our legislature to do the much-needed work to help Floridians. This unemployment system, though, is not something that needs legislative action. It can be fixed with the stroke of a pen by the governor via executive order. As my colleagues have alluded to, we spent reports now over $100 million on vendors and additional staff. Yet now we're hearing that the staff that's being hired is not being trained in any substantive way, that they're actually perhaps being told to tell claimants to call their legislative officials instead of continuing to deal with the DEO. They're creating a circle here, a circle of inaction, a circle of ineptitude, and yes, what appears to be a circle of intentional conduct. Let's stop wasting money on vendors. We've made $25 million in interest on the monies we have not paid out yet this year. Stop the runaround, stop dealing with this broken system, and just pay all the claims now. Period. Floridians cannot suffer any longer. Each one of us standing up here has received calls from people who have talked about suicidal thoughts. This is how serious this issue is. Governor, pay the claims now. And then bring us back to work to deal with the issues that require legislative action. Yes, we appreciate that the governor has finally drawn down on that federal money for election activities. But that money, as the supervisors of elections have pointed out, is needed for operational issues. We need additional safeguards to prevent the spread of the disease, to protect poll workers. We have poll workers who are no longer going to want to volunteer because of the risk that they will be facing. We have locations that we can no longer use because they're in senior centers or other areas where people who are at high risk will be exposed. Those things can be dealt with from a budgetary standpoint. But the substantive issues that we need to address, expansion of early voting, sending a vote by mail to every single voter, fixing the broken cure process that we have for vote by mail ballots and signature verification, these are things that have been implemented by the legislature and can only be fixed by the legislature. This is not a partisan issue. These are not partisan issues. The issue of people being able to put food on their table is not a red issue or a blue issue. It's a humanity issue. Pay the claims now. Thank you, and we'll be happy to take questions.
On another note, this week, the governor opened up South Florida Phase 1. How appropriate does it seem at this point to make that move?
Well, I will speak for myself on this issue. It's a vexing issue. We all want our economy to get back on track. And especially with this broken system, people need income. They need money. And businesses, we don't want businesses to fail. The concern I have with getting back to work is you've got to do it scientifically, based on data. And we simply have not tested enough Floridians to have a real sense of what our situation is. We constantly hear, oh, the numbers are lower than they were projected. We're doing better than we thought. We don't really know that yet because only 1% of Floridians have been tested. So we need to test way more people and really determine how effectively we're dealing with this virus. And only once we have that information and data, I think, can we make a decision to safely open the economy.
What do you think about the expansion expected today to restaurants going up to maybe 50% and gyms reopening? Are we there?
Again, I think we're sort of shooting in the dark here, because without testing, without much more significant testing of more Floridians, it's going to be hard for us to make a determination that we're doing this safely and effectively. I think Senator Thurston would like to address the issue.
Absolutely. I think that certainly we are experimenting here. But unfortunately, we're experimenting with the lives of Floridians. Senator Leader Farmer is right. We need economic regeneration. However, I think that when I listen to the Dr. Fauci and all of the experts from the CDC who indicated that we need to be cautious before we make things worse than they currently are, I think that that's the scientific data that we need to talk about. The fact that the CDC has now been allowed to release their criteria of what we need to do before we expand. When we're talking about going into phase 2, I'm not sure that we make those requirements that they asked about. And that's what we need to be pointing to. Clearly, we do need to begin to look at opening, but we don't need to do it too soon because we're just going to make it more difficult. And this experiment that the governor is harping upon, this experiment is going to utilize the people of Florida as the subject, like guinea pigs.
I just want to put my 2 cents, since I'm from Central Florida, the tourists, the theme parks, the question is like City Walk just opened up the other day. I haven't heard yet how's that going, but if you look out around the country where they've opened up the bars and restaurants, they're not controlling the distance. They're not controlling how many people are packed at the bar. It's a big issue. And for me, the workers who are being called back, especially if it happens with the theme parks, because imagine the hundreds and thousands of people going there. How are you going to control them? How are you going to safeguard your employees? Are you going to make sure that all your employees are not infected with the virus? So there's many questions that I have on opening because I feel we're not there yet. And I say that more testing needs to be done, and especially in areas where you have the high volume of tourism coming in, and hopefully you would protect your employees first. Thank you very much.
Well, when they say they're doing everything they can do, Mike, they're talking about technical fixes, trying to figure out how to get this computer system to work. It keeps spitting out, pending, ineligible. I mean, you can just go on social media, and when you call the constituents we're going to share with you, you're going to hear a variety of fact patterns that are basically just like a hamster on a wheel getting nowhere. Okay? Let's stop with that. It's not getting us anywhere. This computer system cannot handle this situation, period. So just pay every claim. We've made $25 million in interest. Use that money to claw back against fraud if you want. Stop spending $100 million on vendors and new staff that are not adequately training the people to help claimants, that are actually referring them back to legislative aids. I mean, there was just a story that came out yesterday where 4 DEO employees were quoted and they were used anonymously. It's a parade of horribles. Can't answer claim-specific questions. Supervisor knows nothing more. DEO agents unavailable. Call takers get scripts and no real training. I mean, on and on and on. It's just a diversionary system. And that's how it was set up in 2011. To frustrate and obfuscate. And Governor Scott openly bragged how his system was saving businesses so many millions of dollars. Well, now a system that was designed to fail, that faces this kind of volume, will absolutely fail. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is not accidental. Just pay them all and claw back on the few fraudulent claims if you have to.
What do you make of caller being told to go to the United Way?
Yeah, it's outrageous. It's unconscionable. We have an obligation as a state. People rely on us. People, and again, in my office, I can tell you that probably 90% of the people that call us say this is their first time ever having to do this. These are proud Floridians. This is not a narrative of people looking to game the system or to get by. These are people in need. And they're counting on their government. We're supposed to be better than this.
Senator John Morgan tweeted again today, asking for the governor to turn on this. Do you think it's part of the solution?
Well, the judicial branch is there for a reason. And if our executive branch can't operate this system and can't get people benefits to which they're statutorily entitled, then maybe the court system's the only thing left.
Going back to the special session, what makes you hopeful that Republicans are going to change their mind
Because we believe, and why we're here, is to call attention to Floridians so that they call on their elected officials to change their tune. We are now seeing reports and forecasts that our revenue shortfall may now be as much as $10 billion. That's over 10% of our budget. Our budget needs to be redone. That shouldn't be done in secret. That shouldn't be done by a legislative budget commission with no input from the legislators that are supposed to craft that budget. We want to be here as part of that process to make sure that if we have to cut funding, that pay raises for teachers and state employees aren't on the chopping block. That a more equitable distribution of the cuts that have to be made will be implemented. Because we are very concerned that if it's done through a non-transparent legislative budget commission process, that the rich will get richer and the people who really need help are the ones that are going to lose benefits under our budget. I want to thank you all again for being here today. We call on Floridians to call on your elected officials and the governor to put us back to work. We're ready to go. We know Floridians are suffering. We know what we have to do. Our legislature needs to act, and we are prepared to act. Thank you very much.
All right.
Good show.
Good job, guys. Good job.
Very well.